Hey everybody, Kaoiji here. So disclaimer for this video, you might hear my birds in the background. Now this video is also going to be telling you guys that how to get the best looking settings for your PS4. These are going to be subject to change based on the resolution of your monitor and or your TV. So just keep in mind that these may not work for everybody. But they definitely work for me, and I'm on a 4K display. So high resolution settings, make sure this is on. This is actually disabled by default, so make sure you turn this on before you do anything else. Your window text settings are actually going to hit large by default once you do that, so you don't have anything to worry about. I have seen some complaints where the text is too small. Make sure that your high resolution settings are on, or you just change your text settings to large. When you go into the game, the other thing that you want to do is you want to go into your graphics settings. Allow me to go ahead and log in so I can show you what I'm talking about. Now, there are some settings that are on by default. I hear my birds in the background. Sorry, guys. I tried to calm them down before I started recording, but unfortunately they just won't. But anyway. So once you log into the game, go to your graphics settings. It's going to be located in the settings menu. So hit start and then go over to the cog wheel, go over to graphics, system options, graphics. Now, there are a couple things that I do here. You can actually go ahead and when you first boot up the game, it'll say prioritize frame rate, prioritize graphics, prioritize, balanced. I always choose frame rate over anything else. So that's why sometimes you'll see it be washed out more than normal because it's prioritizing your frame rate. But if you really care about graphics that much, you can put on the graphics settings. It'll sometimes dip to about 40 FPS from what I've seen, but ultimately it doesn't make the game unplayable, but it does look better. But I prefer my frame rate. So I turned my screen brightness to 60. Effect light source is now on. Terrain lighting is now on. My camera lighting is 50. There are some ways that you can, mess around with your custom lighting if you have premium. So this is something that you might want to keep in mind. Screen edge darkening, I turn this off. Global illumination, I turn this on. Bloom, I've dropped down to 60 on the PC version. I actually have this completely off. So you can turn this off as well if that's what you want. Light rays you can keep on. Volumetric fog you can keep off. Effect distortion rendering you want to keep off. Fur rendering you want to keep on. Blur, I don't know anybody who likes motion blur of any variety, so I turn that right off. Color tone curve on. Depth of field on. Specular anti-aliasing, I keep that on. I would say you can keep this off because it doesn't really change too much, but I like the way that it looks when it's on. Now, tessellation, I keep off, although you should probably consider keeping this on if you can on your PS4 Pro. On the PS5, it can absolutely handle it. Screen space reflection, you can keep this on as well. It gives everything a nice little darker texture, makes the game look better. Certain things will have that reflection. If you notice in the right side of the screen, it will have that reflection, kind of like ray tracing, but honestly it's not necessary. It does cause some frame rate drops. Ambient occlusion, you can keep this on as well, but I turn this off just so that way my game looks better when it comes to frame rate. Screen space shadow, if you notice here, there are some shadows that turn on. The way that the game renders this unfortunately changes based on your camera and based on the global lighting. So I turn this off because sometimes it has a dipper frame rate as well. Shadow quality, I turn down to 4. Cloud quality, I keep at 3, although it does make the game run better at 1. However, sometimes, which is weird to me, because there are more clouds in the sky, as a result, sometimes there might be some additional frame rate drops. But it's just weird. I don't know why that is. So you can keep that at 3 or at 1. Unless you really like the way that the 2 looks for screenshot purposes, but I would say 3 or 1 does not matter. Anyway, particle quality I keep at 2 because a lot of the particles in the game, especially if you're playing classes like Force or Bouncer or Waker or anything of that sort, will cause your game to have a drop frame rate. Other players' opacity, effects opacity, I keep at 20, mainly because I do like seeing what other players are doing, but sometimes it does become a little bit distracting because the effects are so massive. So keep this at 20. It'll make it so that way it's bearable and you're able to still see things and it doesn't affect your frame rate whatsoever, especially if you're playing again on a PS4 Pro or PS5. Hide other players' accessories. I turn this for all characters. A lot of the reasons why is because when you're in massive areas like the city, other player accessories will just, you know, drop your frame rate. So your game will look great, but your frame rate will go down. You don't have to hide this if you don't want to. If you're on a PS5, you don't need to hide this at all. If you're on a PS4 Pro, I would suggest you turning this to all characters. Anyway, maximum detailed model display, you can turn this all the way up if you really want to 32 if you're on a PS5, but on a PS4 Pro, I would keep it down at 20. Anti-aliasing, TAA or FXAA, doesn't really matter which one you choose. TAA for a PS4 Pro, TAA plus FXAA on the PS5. AMD FSR for both consoles, just keep that off. 3D rendering resolution, you can keep that high on both consoles. Automatic resolution adjustment, I'd keep that on. Maximum frame rate, I'd keep that on. And texture filtering, I'd keep that at anti-aliasing times 16. I've never actually known how to say that word, so whatever. Anyway, I'm not even going to try to hide that and say I said that wrong, you know, because usually I do that on purpose, but I really don't know how to say that word. Texture resolution is also high, and then terrain draw distance I keep at 3. The reason I do a lot of these settings is because on the PS4 Pro, it'll prioritize graphics at some cases, but I do like having that steady 60 FPS, so that way I never have to worry about, you know, anything changing or becoming jarring overall. There will be times where the game just doesn't look good, because it's going to prioritize FPS. So anything on your consoles, make sure you keep your frame rate just as fine. It's just a console thing. You're going to have to get used to it. A lot of games do it. You just may not notice it. But it's definitely noticeable when it comes to Phantasy Star Online 2 New Genesis, especially in party play when you go into some of the later zones. One thing to keep in mind, something that I do here is I actually go over to my console settings, and I go to screen and video, and then I make sure that my resolution is not set to automatic. I actually set that manually, and then my 4K video transfer rate, you can actually keep that as automatic, but that's really just to prevent any screen flickering that might be going on. I turn HDR off and ALM off as well, but that's just because I don't like the way anything that looks like that. I'm not one of the people that swears by HDR whatsoever, so that's just my opinion. But I hope these settings help you at least somewhat. Again, it may not work for everybody because everybody's screen is different. Everybody has different environments, where maybe you might be running a larger TV, maybe you might be running on a CRT still. There are a lot of different things that will make it so that your console looks better or worse, depending. The ideal resolution, if you're asking my opinion, for things like the PS4 Pro and the PS5 is 1980 by 1080, which is a 1080p monitor, right? Or television or anything of that sort. That's the ideal setting that you'll have for games like Phantasy Star, or to make most games just look better. But again, just my opinion, just where I'm at right now. Yeah, I hope this video helps. I know that some people have been complaining, especially about text size, and a lot of people did not know that you need to enable the high resolution frame rate or the high resolution mode from the very get-go, because it is off by default. One other thing to note, that if you're on the PS4 like base version, a lot of these settings may be locked out to you because of just, you know, how old that console is. So just keep that in mind. That's something you want to understand first and foremost, just as an entire whole. But I hope that, like I said, I hope this helps, and thank you guys again for watching. Stay awesome, stay beautiful, and I'll see you guys in the next video. Peace. I'm out.